I'm Dr. Bonnie Baxter. I am a professor of biology and director of Great Salt Lake Institute at Westminster College. I grew up really far from here. I didn't grow up in Utah. I grew up in North Carolina, and I played on the islands on the coast. That was where we vacationed, and I learned how to sail, and I like to paddle in the water and swim and boat. And I think I've always been drawn to exploring water. And that's where I found myself studying nature and really paying attention to what the birds were doing and what was going on in the water. And I really think when I landed in the dry desert of Utah, I was immediately drawn to Great Salt Lake because I needed my inland ocean. So my path to Great Salt Lake is a little circuitous. I didn't know anything about Great Salt Lake when I moved to Utah. I was drawn by the scientific question of how do extreme microorganisms, this example of life that lives in these extreme places, how do they manage in the environment? How do they deal with all the sunlight or drying up inside of a salt crystal? And I thought that was a fascinating question. And I thought if we could learn how these microbes do that, maybe we could think about microorganisms on the planet Mars, for example. How do they deal with extremes of drying up and high ultraviolet light? And so those were the questions that really drew me to Great Salt Lake. And as a biochemist, I thought, I will just look at the molecules inside the microbes that are from Great Salt Lake, and I'm sure someone around here has some microbes I could borrow. And it turned out that nobody had been doing that work. And so somebody needed to study the microbiology of Great Salt Lake. And I said, well, I'll do it. And so I began this work, and it has taken me into a lot of wild places with my students and a lot of really interesting questions. And now the questions, I think, have become even more poignant because now the microorganisms, I realize, are the foundation of an ecosystem that is currently under stress. And so my work is taking on sort of this new importance. If I think about my trajectory and just in the time that I have known Great Salt Lake, before I met Great Salt Lake, let's say when I graduated high school, Great Salt Lake was at the highest elevation it had ever been. And it was flooding. It was going over the interstate. And then it settled down a little bit. And when I moved here, it was still pretty high. I canoed around Antelope Island, all the way around Antelope Island. And my students and I went out looking for the Spiral Jetty by Robert Smithson, this artwork that's built into the North Arm. And we canoed over it and couldn't find it. It was still underwater. And so that would have been like 1998. And then in about 2003, the water started shrinking in the lake, and I'd never seen anything like it. And suddenly this salt started precipitating out all around the lake, and it was like this glistening white salt on the shores, and Spiral Jetty emerged, and it's like the lake gave birth to this artwork. It was really cool. And now I go there not with wonder, but maybe with sadness, because now the lake keeps shrinking. And so now I see the microbialites on the bottom of the lake that I study are being beached and exposed and dried out. And the lake water just keeps receding. And so just in the time that I've known Great Salt Lake, like the margins have changed so much over the years. And some of those felt really positive and beautiful, and some of those moments have felt really sad.